In this video, I want to talk about a common mistake that people make when it comes to their ADHD medication. My name is Dr. Dan Sullivan. I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. I practice functional medicine here in San Diego, and I also have an ADHD diagnosis myself. So that common mistake that people make, or that common belief that people have, is thinking that their medication is going to be a silver bullet, that taking a medication is going to quote unquote fix their ADHD. So I see a lot of patients, a lot of parents of children that come in on medication who unfortunately are taking a medication, but they're not seeing the results that they want. And so that can happen for a variety of different reasons. I'm going to get into a few of them today in this video. So I would say number one might be nutrient deficiencies. A medication is not going to fix underlying nutrient deficiencies that are playing a key role in ADHD symptoms. So some of those might be iron, and that can be checked in the blood with an iron panel, most notably ferritin, which is the storage form of iron. So in this example, iron is a necessary cofactor in the production of dopamine. So if you think about it, you're giving yourself or a child an ADHD medication, and they might be deficient in the cofactors to make dopamine, which is, dopamine is the neurotransmitter that stimulant medications are targeting. So if you're pushing that pathway in the brain and the brain doesn't have the necessary cofactors, iron being just one of them, that person may be getting inconsistent benefits of that medication, and they're really not going to be reaping the full benefits of the medication. So B vitamins are another huge cofactor in the manufacturing of dopamine. Vitamin D is another key player, omega-3 fatty acids, zinc. So all these things I commonly test for in clinical practice because they are foundational in terms of supporting that dopamine system. Another factor would be poor sleep. So ADHD medications can sometimes make sleep worse depending on how long the medication stays active in the body. Is it a short-acting or long-acting medication? And so sleep loss can very much exacerbate ADHD symptoms. So it can be this vicious cycle where you're taking a medication to alleviate some of those ADHD symptoms, and then you're getting a lack of sleep, which is making it worse. So it can turn into this really vicious cycle that I actually see a lot in clinical practice, and I used to suffer with a lot myself personally in my own journey with ADHD. And so that's another big factor. And so things like shutting down electronics 30 to 60 minutes before bed, having a nighttime routine, getting some supplements on board, perhaps a magnesium glycinate. That's one of my favorites. I also like ashwagandha or phosphatidylserine for basically calming down the cortisol response at night. So to some degree, these interventions may be very, very helpful. Sometimes you may need to talk to your provider about changing the dosing or the timing of the medication, or even the type of medication that you're taking so that it's not compromising sleep, because getting adequate sleep is absolutely critical in the management of ADHD. And the last point I'll cover is nutrition. So focusing on protein especially. So if we're not getting enough protein contains the amino acid L-tyrosine. And L-tyrosine is required for making dopamine in the first place. So it's one of the key building blocks of dopamine. So again, if you think about it, very similar to the nutrients that we need as cofactors, we also need the precursors or the building blocks, the raw materials to even make dopamine. And so if we don't have adequate protein, we can really have difficulty making enough dopamine or having enough raw materials to make dopamine. And so if we're pushing that pathway with a stimulant medication, that could become very problematic if we don't have the raw ingredients to even make dopamine in the first place. And one of the things that I see very commonly in clinical practice is that people who are taking stimulants, they are experiencing a lack of appetite. And a lot of patients with ADHD just simply aren't hungry in the morning. They don't feel like eating. And so they're already behind the 8 ball when it comes to having adequate nutrition on board. So It can be things like at least getting a protein shake in the morning, a high protein, an easy to consume shake or a smoothie. Another few general tips about protein is the timing of protein is also very important. So, a lot of us with ADHD, we have a tendency of going into hyperfocus mode and just forgetting to eat or drink for hours on end. So, sometimes it's very helpful to be setting a timer periodically throughout the day if you're one of those people who has a tendency of just forgetting time, and setting a timer for 3 hours, 4 hours to make sure you're consuming some food, especially protein throughout the day. That can be very helpful. So, to sum it up, medication can be tremendously helpful for the right individual, but again, it is all about taking care of and addressing those root causes. If there are nutrient deficiencies at play, or if there are mineral deficiencies, if there's a lack of protein, if there is difficulties with sleep. And again, these are just a few. I'm just scratching the surface at all the underlying issues that can be at play in terms of ADHD management. So medication can certainly help, but I just want you to understand that it's not the whole picture. And if you're taking medication, or if your child is taking medication and you're not seeing consistent results, or the results that you know that you could be, some of these factors can certainly be at play. So if you're interested in learning more about supporting your ADHD naturally for yourself or for a child, you can either schedule a discovery call with me by clicking the link below to work with me one-on-one, or I've just launched Natural ADHD Solutions, which is a course with a community online that goes through the 6 pillars of ADHD that are essential to master to really manage those symptoms naturally. So if you're interested in that, there's another link below.